On the night of March 11th, 1242, Great Khan Ögedei vomited, convulsed, and then opened his eyes, and the Mongol conquest of Europe did not stop. In our history, he died that winter in Karakorum after a long night of drinking, and the news of his death raced west along the imperial post roads, ordering Batu Khan to withdraw from the Hungarian plain for a kurultai that would elect a successor. That single seizure, survived or succumbed to, sat at the hinge of the 13th century. In this alternate timeline exploration, we examine what could have happened and why the real history unfolded differently. In this version, Ögedei's senior wife Turagani keeps the wine cups away from him through the convalescence. The court physicians purge and bleed him. Within weeks he is upright again, irritable, weakened, but alive. No courier is dispatched carrying the death summons. On the Danube, where Batu Khan and his chief strategist Subutai have been waiting through the muddy spring for word from the imperial capital, the silence is read the only way silence can be read at a frontier 5,000 miles from home. It means continue. What no one in Christendom yet understood, what no chronicler in Esztergom or Vienna or Rome would grasp until it was far too late, was that the Mongol War in Europe had not peaked. It had paused. The campaign of 1241 had already broken the kingdoms of the East. On April 9th, Béla and Kadaň had annihilated Duke Henry II of Silesia and the flower of the Polish and Teutonic chivalry at Legnica. 2 days later, on April 11th, Batu and Subutai had destroyed King Béla IV's Hungarian host at Mohi on the Sahor River, and Béla had fled west and then south to the Dalmatian coast, taking refuge at last on the island of Trogir, while Kadaň's riders hunted him across the Balkan passes. By midsummer of 1242, with no recall, the Mongols turned their full weight against the frontier of the Holy Roman Empire. They ford the Danube in columns, using the low water of August, where the ice of winter had once carried them. They reduced the fortified towns of western Hungary in succession: Győr, Sopron, Pressburg, employing the siege doctrine Subutai had refined in northern China: invest, summon, breach, massacre the garrison, spare the artisans. Duke Frederick II of Austria, called the Quarrelsome, rides out with a mixed force of Austrian knights and Styrian levies to meet a reconnaissance in force near Wiener Neustadt. He is killed in the engagement, shot from the saddle by a horse archer whose name no chronicle records. Austria, leaderless, opens like a split fruit. Vienna in the autumn of 1242 is a city of perhaps 20,000 souls behind walls that had never been seriously tested. Subutai invests it methodically. His engineers, drawn from conquered Jin and Khwarezmian cities, assemble counterweight trebuchets on the slopes above the Wien River. Persian sappers begin galleries beneath the eastern gate. The siege lasts 6 weeks. When the wall comes down in early November, the assault is brief and the sack is total. The cathedral chapter of St. Stephen's is scattered. The Babenberg archives burn. News of Vienna's fall travels faster than the Mongol advance. In Regensburg, in Augsburg, in Prague, the bells ring for days. In Lyon, the cardinals who had gathered in the shadow of a dead pope, Gregory IX, had died the year before, and Celestine IV had lasted only 17 days on the throne. Understand for the first time that the old categories of Christian warfare no longer apply. And yet the worst was still to come. The Mongols had taken a capital. They had not yet taken a sea, or a river, or the keys of St. Peter. Rather than disperse for the season, the Mongols winter on the Hungarian plain for a second year. This is Subutai's signature: the refusal to release a beaten enemy. Pannonia is divided into foraging districts. Captured Hungarian and Cuman officials are pressed into administering grain requisitions. Envoys ride out in every direction. To the Doge of Venice, Jacopo Tiepolo, they carry offers of trade. To the Genoese, the same. To the princes of the Rhineland, demands for submission and the customary earth and water. Emperor Frederick II Hohenstaufen, excommunicated and at war with the remnants of the papal faction in Italy, receives a letter he does not answer. It is during this winter that Subutai makes the decision that will define the shape of the West. He will not drive on Germany, he will drive on Italy. In the spring of 1243, Khadan's southern column crosses the Julian Alps and descends into the Friulian plain. The Patriarchate of Aquileia falls within weeks. Venetian scouts on the mainland report dust clouds visible from the campanile of San Marco. Doge Tiepolo, an old man who had seen the Fourth Crusade and the seizure of Constantinople, is a realist before he is a Christian. He accepts the Mongol embassy in the Doge Palace and signs a commercial treaty, the Lagoon inviolate, the Rialto untouched, Venetian galleys available for the carriage of Mongol envoys to Constantinople and beyond. In exchange, Venice is spared and given privileged access to the trade that will now flow without interruption from the Yellow Sea to the Adriatic. The accommodation scandalizes Christendom. It also works. Khadan crosses the Apennines in the summer of 1243, guided through the passes by Ghibelline lords who had spent a generation hating the papacy more than they feared anything beyond it. Bologna negotiates. Florence wavers. Rome, garrisoned by a few hundred militia and without a sitting pope, the Cardinal Sinibaldo Fieschi has only just been elected Innocent IV and is still at Anagni, has no meaningful defense. The Aurelian walls are breached at the Porta Salaria after a brief assault. The Lateran is looted. Innocent IV is extracted by a column of Hospitallers and spirited across the Alps to Lyon, where he will govern what remains of the Latin Church for the rest of his life. Frederick II, cut off from his German lands by the fall of Vienna and from his Sicilian base by Mongol patrols on the Po, retreats to Apulia. The emperor, who had crowned himself in Jerusalem and built the castles of Puglia, now commands a coastline and little else. He writes to Louis IX of France. He writes to Henry III of England. He writes to his son Conrad in Germany. The letters go out. Few come back. The Lombard cities, sensing the shift in weight, negotiate separate arrangements with Khadan's lieutenants. In Foggia, in the winter of 120-44, Frederick dies of dysentery years before his historical death, and with him the last credible imperial project of the medieval West. A durable Mongol frontier stabilizes along the Rhine and the Eastern Alps, administered from garrisons at Buda and Vienna by governors who are Mongol, Alan, and Chinese. The golden horde of this timeline is not a steppe khanate, but a continental empire with ports on the Adriatic and tribute roads reaching to the North Sea. Louis IX of France abandons his planned crusade to Egypt and spends his reign fortifying the line of the Rhone and the Meuse. A coalition of Rhenish archbishops and Bohemian lords pays annual tribute in silver and falcons. The Latin Church, governed from Lyon, turns inward toward missionary diplomacy, sending Franciscans east to the Khan's court in the hope of converting from within what could not be stopped from without. The real world spared Europe this fate by the narrowest of margins. A man drank too much on a December night in Karakorum, and an empire turned around on the Danube because of it. History, so often imagined as the product of vast impersonal forces, here pivoted on a single failing liver, 4,000 miles from the nearest Christian cathedral. What survived? Survived by accident. What was lost in this other timeline? The Hohenstaufen dream, the Roman Sea, the cities of the Danube as we know them, was lost for the same reason.